Welcome to Fortress of Faith with Tom Wallace, calling North America to repentance and revival.
Back once again at the corner of truth and courage. Thank you for joining us here today. This is Tom Wallace. This week I've been talking to you about my attempts to, I'll be writing a book here on the subject, and it's entitled A Case for an Islamic AntiChrist. If you missed any of our broadcasts, you can always go to our former broadcast and find them on our website, fortressoffaith.com, fortressoffaith.com. We're also on Spotify and we're on YouTube. Go to our channels there and you can re-listen to these. And also, too, I think you can get transcripts on YouTube and Spotify of the programs. Share them with your friends. I appreciate you doing that there. All right. So I've laid out for you some of my arguments. I don't have time to really recap on that because I got a lot to go through here today. Before I get into naming, like I said I would, I want to give one more argument before we slide into it. I call a geographical argument for why the Antichrist will likely be Islamic rather than what I was taught, and you probably were taught, that he'll be European and might even be the Pope. I've talked to you about, the biblical reason the word Antichrist refers to a spirit. The Bible tells us very, very clearly that spirit, the spirit of Antichrist, is he that denies the Father and the Son. The only religion in the world that denies the Father and the Son is Islam. We talked about another argument, the great whore. I said I wasn't going to recap, but I'm going to try to. The great whore fits not Rome, but fits Mecca. We talked about the circumstantial evidence that in Revelation chapter 13, where it teaches about the beast and the second beast, the Antichrist and the Antichrist and the false prophet. There in Islam, they teach of the Dajjal and of Isa coming and the Mahdi. And it's circumstantial, I call it circumstantial evidence that they teach these things. But it's interesting. It fits, again, with my theory in my case for an Islamic Antichrist. Now, let me give you a geographical argument before I get into giving you a face that might fit what I'm talking about. The geographical argument is this. It's found in Daniel chapter 8. Daniel chapter 8, verse number 9. Now, clearly, just about every Bible scholar would suggest and agree that the little horn that's referred to in Daniel chapter 8 and Daniel chapter 9 is the Antichrist, the Antichrist that we're speaking of. And it says this, and out of one of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceeding great, toward the south and toward the east and toward the pleasant land. So we're going from south and east to get to the location of the little horn. So this is an interesting argument. Now, I've seen some use this argument to say, it must be Rome. They've already deduced, they've already concluded that it's going to be Rome. And so they start their pinpoint in Rome. Then they go south and then they go east. And guess where they end up? In Jerusalem. So they're going to say that he's going to rule from Jerusalem. Although there are hills there, I've never known Jerusalem being named as the city of seven hills. And I wouldn't consider it in the wilderness there. Neither would I Rome. And that's what we talked about earlier on. But they've started at Rome and came down at the location. But Daniel, when he's writing, is not talking one bit about Rome. There's nothing here that suggests that he is starting in Rome in his writings. He's actually in Babylon. But the city, the area that he's talking about is Jerusalem. All he's writing about is referring to, the kingdom of Israel and Jerusalem. So if we start at Jerusalem and go south and go east, guess where we end up? In Saudi Arabia. And we would end up in Mecca if we went south and went east. Just a geographical argument there for your consideration. Now let's get into what I said we would do today. And I'm really going to go out on a limb. And I I want to be clear. I want to make sure that no one leaves today's broadcast and says this. Tom Wallace said that the Antichrist is XYZ, is this person. Okay? I am not, although I'm going to name a name, I'm not saying he is the Antichrist. But I do want to kind of give you an idea of the position. A man in a position that this man is in would become a perfect Antichrist. And let me explain who I'm talking about. Currently, right now, the crown prince of Saudi Arabia is a powerful man. He is not only so powerful in his own nation, he is very influential in all the Arab world. In fact, one of the reasons why the Arabs stayed home and did not go to war with Israel was because of this man, and his name is MBS, Mohammed bin Salman. And Mohammed bin Salman, I believe, has been one of the greatest reformers of the Middle East in our day. He has changed not only his country, but he is changing the attitude of many Arabs in the Middle East. Now, yes, he has a dark side. He truly does. I don't think, we can see anyone who holds a position in the royal family with so many brothers and others competing to get that number one spot to be the crown prince and then to become the king. For centuries and centuries, kings, and when they change over to a new generation, many of those children were killed off, and any threat to their authority would be dealt with the sword or with the hanging noose or whatever. A lot of that goes on in royal families around the world, has for centuries. And yet there's not been that much bloodshed. Yet there is a little bit of blood on his hands. I think we can agree about that with Jamal Khashoggi and other things. But this man has risen to great power. And something happened about a year ago. I was watching an interview he had with Brett Baird. It was a 35-minute interview. And if you didn't see it, I really want to encourage you to go find it. Google it. You'll find it. Brett Baird is probably one of the few journalists left on Fox News. Sadly, most of our news is not brought to us by true journalists who actually spend most of their time reporting instead of sharing their opinions. And Brett Baird went over to interview MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, back in September of 2023. So this is almost 2 years old now. And Brett Baird lent in. He just really peppered him with some very difficult questions. I was proud of Brett that he wasn't there as a puppet and to, just pitch softballs to him, because he needed to be hitting some hard questions. And he did. And here was the impressive thing. MBS leant right in and answered the questions. He didn't do the two-step shuffle. He didn't avoid questions. He didn't say what we're going to talk about and not talk about. He took responsibility when he needed to take responsibility, and he answered all the questions. And honestly, at the end of the interview, and I know some of the skeletons that were in this man's closet, and I knew some of the things he was dealing with. And I got to say, though, at the end of the interview, I walked away thinking, I like that guy, honestly. And the very next morning, I woke up with that on my mind, and I thought, oh my goodness, wouldn't it be just like the Antichrist to make everyone like him, even when you know there's things that you shouldn't like about him. And you know, isn't that like what the Antichrist would be? The Antichrist, I've had people call me sometimes and say, hey, do you think President Trump is the Antichrist? And I say, no. He is, Trump is often a divider. You know, he divides people. And, but the Antichrist will be a uniter. Now, again, do not leave this broadcast and go around telling everybody that I am saying that Mohammed bin Salman is the Antichrist. I'm not. But the type of this person would fit in an interesting way. Here's the thing you need to be aware of. They are building the future in Saudi Arabia. They have the money. They have the influence. The world is only 40% of the world population is within a 6-hour flight to his country. And they're building the future. The cities that they're building are nothing less than amazing and attractive. They will attract the world to come live in their city. If you've not yet heard of Neom, Neom, these are 5 cities that they're building in the desert. And they're going to be anything but spectacular. They are, the Line is one of the cities. The Line, if you were to build that city in America, let's say you built it down in Florida and you started in Tampa, this city would stretch all the way across the Florida and end up at the Space Coast in the Atlantic, and it will go all the way across the state there. The walls are going to be as high as the Empire State Building. It's a city you live in. It's 3-dimensional living, like we'll live one day in the New Jerusalem. The New Jerusalem is a cube. We'll live inside that 3-dimensional living in heaven. That's what heaven's going to be like. Well, they're building this city this way, and it's amazing what they're doing. Look for Neom, Neom. We'll have a link on our website about this here. And so they're building the future, and the future, the world. One thing they're not short of is money. They are rich beyond belief, and they have that money because of oil, and they know that one day the oil will run out, so they have to build something that will bring the world to them. This is what they're doing. And so they are going to become that pleasant land. And so I see a number of things that are pointing us to Saudi Arabia or the Middle East. And this, of course, is where Islam is located. And another point to my argument of my case of why the Antichrist will be an Islamic Antichrist. Well, the time says we've got to stop here. And so we'll tie this up. And if you have any thoughts and comments there, reach us at fortressoffaith.com, fortressoffaith.com. So I hope that this will edify us and help us in our understanding. Join us again next week at the Corner of Truth and Courage. God bless you.